Ladies and gentlemen, just when you think we have a break in the world of chess in terms of record-breaking, Magnus Carlsen wakes up on a random Tuesday and decides to set the world on fire. He did exactly that, and in this video, I will be showing you 11 Magnus Carlsen games and, spoiler alert, 11 victories. Magnus won a tournament on 11/11, November the 11th, with 11 out of 11. It also happened to be the 11th series of games in the Title Tuesday Chess.com tournament leading up to the 2026 Esports World Cup Final. So, I mean, you talk about numerology. It also starts at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and I can go on and on. This was really impressive. There are tournaments where Magnus wins every game and he's losing in like 3 or 4 of them and has to get out of dangerous situations. This was complete dominance in a variety of different ways, in attacking positions, defensive positions, whatever it is. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy the masterclass, you know? The best combination in the world of chess is Magnus Carlsen playing exceptionally well and me explaining it to you in a way that you can understand. And that is what we're going to do today. So, his campaign kicked off against a 2600 rated player from Turkey. White started this game with knight f3. Magnus played c5, just a very flexible move. White can now play e4 to turn the game into a Sicilian. This is called the ready. But from the opening, we got the following position. And here Magnus played a very interesting move. So in the English opening, c4, when black responds with c5, copying, one of the main ideas, one of the trickiest ideas is to put the queen on d7. And that's what Magnus is preparing here, because then this bishop goes here, and the queen guards the bishop, and there are just some various tactics that exist. This is a waiting move. And when white goes e3 to then try to put a second pawn on d4, this move on its own allows black to play this move, bishop takes c3. What's interesting is this is actually my English course, but with white. With white, I recommend this bishop taking this knight. So Magnus plays the opening, but in reverse. And what's really interesting about this is we are now getting a purely positional and technical game, a technical feast, if you will, a buffet of ideas. What is the point? Normally, you never give away a long-range piece like this, but because white has committed so many pawns to dark squares, it's going to be really difficult for white to develop that bishop, the bishop that we've given away. And on top of that, we have some pawns to work with here. Pushing this pawn will leave 2 weaknesses, so black will potentially put pressure on them. So Magnus plays f5, which is the most aggressive way to play this idea. This is the way I like to play this idea, but actually the computer for black wants to put everything on a dark square because there are no more dark squared bishops, obviously. Magnus plays f5. The best move now is to get very aggressive. If you don't, and instead you go for something that looks like this is terrible for white. In fact, it is so terrible that even though white gives away a knight to win a full rook, Magnus gives up a rook in the corner of the board. This position is technically winning for black. Not just better, winning. Because what happens is you win yourself a pawn on c4 that attacks this bishop, and white just can't make a move. The king comes out to d7. The bishop is stuck behind the pawns. Magnus goes king c7 to bring his rook to the center, and just knight e4. And this is the saddest bishop ever. And when you just look at how high level this is, on the 7th move, he gave away his dark squared bishop with a long-term idea of playing against this guy. And look at this, that bishop is dead. It will never, ever participate in this game without significant material loss. White plays bishop d2 and immediately blunders the game. Just blunders the game because the rook is hanging and it can't move. Has to guard the bishop. So the bishop goes here, Magnus takes, and just look at how absolutely methodical this is. Rook d3, rook e3, e5, forces the king forward. Folks, I am just playing moves. The bishop moved on the 36th move. When did the bishop go to e1? 19. It didn't move for 17 turns. And by the time it did move, Magnus was just winning. Now, he needed to be a little bit precise, of course, because you're a little worried this pawn can queen. But to be honest with you, even though you queen and they queen, you are totally winning because you have 2 extra pawns, the king is running around, and on top of that, you are also up a ton on time. So as long as you don't blunder anything catastrophic, yeah, nice little moment here. Look at this nice moment. Queen b8. And this is why you actually have to be super careful in chess. This is a stalemate trap position. You know, many people here with black, they take the queen, and in their mind, they think the best move is to take the queen. So they would pre-move pawn push because you want to make a new one. But white goes here, and had Magnus pre-moved this, assuming the best out of his opponent, b2 is stalemate. It is a draw. So be very careful, never resign, always look for tricks, even if it means not taking back. But knight c5 is just mate. And that's just the first game, a beautiful technical game showing how to navigate a close position. You know, white is, I understand, 600-700 points lower rated than Magnus, but just showing how to play against such a pawn structure. You know, people are very bad at close positions. They're very bad at using their pawns effectively. Now, in the next game, Magnus played an international master from Madagascar. You talk about, I mean, it's definitely the best player in the country. And I think this is their board one at the Olympiad. Rakoto Mahoro. And very, very long first name and middle name. So in this game, Magnus actually played a Vienna, and then he played the move a3. The move a3 is completely ridiculous, but it was actually just seen in the World Cup. Now, if you're watching this and you're wondering where the World Cup recaps are, because I'm recording this November 2025, in the round of 32, about 4 matchups were decided in the first round, and, you know, the tiebreak round will decide all the others, so we will be covering it there. The bishop goes to c5, knight f3, and Magnus plays just an utterly ridiculous opening. Like, the bishop is blocked. I mean, this is not what we teach the beginners. Black plays d5, and then d4 ultimately. Magnus has to drop back. And from the opening, of course, given the way that white has played this, you know, white is certainly worse. Black is doing quite well, and black has a decent position. Knight goes back to h2. So how is Magnus going to dig himself out of the hole? He dug himself. He didn't just find himself in one. He dug it. H4. This is just mysterious. I have no idea what h4 is doing. We trade a knight, and then black goes here, and that allows Magnus to trade off 2 pieces, put a knight on f5, and then play g4. This is ridiculous chess. But like I just said, in the first game, he gets a technical feast, just a very complicated, you know, game. And in this game, he just goes all in on attacking. He just gives away a knight. This is a Trojan horse right here, offering it up. If you take it, of course, I'm going to take back and open the file and go on a massive attack. Black plays a4, and so far, black is doing a really fantastic job, so Magnus has to get out of the position and keep kind of trying to attack. Black plays g5. So far, black is playing basically a flawless game against Magnus. We have queen f5 check. Queen takes. Magnus takes with the e-pawn to then put his knight on e4. Very, very instructive how he opened the square for his piece. Black attacks the pawn. Magnus plays rook a2, absurd move. Now we have knight e7. The king is going to come to the game. Rook c1, like, how is Magnus going to find his way out of this with 2 minutes on the clock? You kind of back Magnus in any scramble. There goes c4. There goes the pawn. Black retreats. And now we keep walking around with the king. We're looking for our moment. Pawn to c5. It's been 30 moves of playing on equal grounds with the opponent. Rook a1, rook b1, b3. Like, slow walk to prepare this move. But 39 moves later, and the position's equal. Knight a5 check. The position is equal. 40 moves. You got to give credit to the opponent, who is playing a very, very good game, but Magnus sacrifices a pawn to get an outside pass pawn. Now that pawn is cleared for takeoff, and he is going to grind the opponent down until the 44th move, where black didn't know what to do, offered a trade, and allowed one mistake. One mistake, 45 moves into the game, the back rank has been infiltrated, and the game is literally over on the spot. Why is it over on the spot? Magnus wins the furthest pawn, and black just cannot stop that pawn. Black is going to try. He's going to get a little bit of counterplay, but rook h7, h6. White will stop the pawn, even though it will cost him material, but the game is over. Magnus picks up his pawn, his piece, his queen, whatever you want to call it, converts very nicely, and this is, yeah. You talk about, I mean, in this game, he played a little bit more creatively, but he had to win a position that for 40 moves was equal, and most people require a lot of time to stay equal with Magnus. Yeah, the person playing with the black pieces here was equal the whole game. Really, the whole game, extremely impressive stuff. Now, once you start winning a couple of games in this tournament, you start getting all the monsters. So now we go up, and I believe the opponent in this game is this? No, I thought this was Bartel. But there's a lot of very, very strong Polish grandmasters. So in this game, we have, e6, b6 setup. I've played this myself many times. White plays a3, very annoying. Doesn't allow bishop b4. So Magnus goes knight f6, knight e4, and again is going to get a structure-based game. Watch this. He's going to play knight d7, and then, white could have maybe done something, but there was nothing particularly there, and this is the position. So I have played this type of pawn structure many times. I'm very interested in how Magnus will outplay his opponent, because the bishop is on a very annoying square. The knight can't move without, trading that bishop, which you don't really want to do. You could go bishop h3 and then move the knight. You're restricting white from playing b4, so white plays b3. Now you play rook e8, just waiting. e5, trying to get the opponent to do something. Is he going to push? Is he going to take? Is he going to ignore? He pushes, and that gives Magnus access to this square and stabilizes the center quite a bit. So knight c5, queen b2, and now bishop takes f3. I would never in a million years play like this. I give away the bishop? Really? Bishop takes, queen d7. And now we are seeing how a bishop and a knight can be better than two bishops. Those two bishops for white will never break through. Never. You can't go here because I have a fork on a4 and then e4. I have queen h3 ideas when I want them. I have f5, e4 ideas when I want them. So bishop back to g2. Magnus plays f5 and has just a total domination here. Looking to trade the bishops and a4. Central lock. Kingside shut down. Center shut down. Infiltrating over here. White has to go b4. The knight immediately jumps in, anchored by the pawn, attacking the rook. White moves the rook. Magnus grabs the bishop pair and plays this thundering move, pawn to e3, offering up a Trojan pawn. If you take it, then the e-file is broken. I play bishop h6. Opposite colored bishops are usually drawish, but not with queens, rooks, and every other pawn on the board. White takes. Here comes Magnus. It looks like you're going to defend yourself, but honestly, not for long. Look at this. Absolute masterclass of a game. Just positional strangle. Strangle. How do you survive this? Queen e7. It looks like, at the end of the day, black can't break through. White has defended this 4 times. Black has attacked it 4 times. Except, I can. How do you break free of this defensive setup? I don't know why I'm highlighting the bishop. How do you break free? Which piece can you actually target? In 1 second. Magnus plays g5. Not only am I going to get rid of the rook defending the pawn, I'm literally going to trap the rook. White goes queen d4, g4. You can play. You can also play rook e4. Both moves are okay. You push the queen back. g4, if you take on f5, I play bishop e3. So you have to lose the rook. And now it's just a matter of time. I attack the rook. I win it. Queen g5. How are we going to win this position? White actually has 2 extra pawns. How are we going to win this position? We're going to attack the king. You can't go there and protect this at the same time. Queen h2, we've broken in. Queen e5, offering a trade, and this game is just over. You have the worst possible pawn to defend, just like in the previous game. Magnus loves to secure that advantage in the endgame. The outside pass pawn, it's just over. You have to be a little precise. You have to make sure you don't blunder anything. You've stopped this pawn. This pawn's queening. Ladies and gentlemen, Magnus Carlsen 3-0. What a game, by the way. I mean, to win this with black, only one piece has crossed the center line. He gets this, and from there, the game is finished. To win this so easily with black, to understand how the 2 bishops for white are a non-factor, using the flank pawn and the center pawn to get this stranglehold, break through at the right moment with the pawn, and this bishop just rendered useless by the structure and by his own pawns. I mean, I watch these games, when Magnus sleeps enough and is in a good mood, has good air quality, is wearing the right type of jeans, dude, it's over. I have 8 more games. That was 3 games. So, like I said, this was the worst position Magnus had in the entire tournament. This was against an international master, I think a young player from France, Scarabi. Not the actual name of the person. It's, this is Marco Materia. Yeah, this is knight f3, d5. It was a Catalan. Magnus, played in some way where he got very aggressive. But I think as the game progressed, black played very well, even though, see, you can play very well against Magnus, but it will take a lot of time. And Magnus went for a bad trade, allowed black to get a lot of activity. Here, f6 was apparently just winning for black because the bishop is trapped. Pawn to f6, bishop f4, and g5 and white doesn't have a square for the bishop. Just in the middle game, f6, g5. Black didn't see that. He played rook e8, he played it in 1 second. He didn't even think for a second about the move f6, which is kind of tragic, because f6, g5 and Magnus would not have gone 11 points. I don't know how he would have survived the game. I'm not sure he would have won it. Now this doesn't work. Now this doesn't work because of one trick, which is I can take the rook and I can play rook e1. So just in time, right? And the point is that I'm attacking the rook, and if we trade, I am then threatening mate. So I just get out in time, rook f8, bishop f4. Now the difference is I have this move. You see, previously, if that had happened, bishop e3 wasn't possible. f6, here, g5, bishop e3 was not possible, because after pawn takes, I would have taken here. So the entire idea of bishop e3 is that if you take, I take the knight, right? No, no, no. It's rook e3. This was the idea. The knight is under attack, and when the knight moves, Magnus, I don't know how he did this. This is completely wicked stuff. He correctly identified that the black king is so weak that the knight is not even worth the trouble. Black has a 2-point advantage. Black has 4 pawns to 5 and an entire extra knight. But because white is just threatening a mate or a mate, it's extremely difficult to defend this position. I don't know how on earth Magnus came up with this. Black goes here, which is the best move, trying to give away the knight to win the rook. White goes here, threatening mate. You now have to give a check and come here. And if you don't spot that, and instead you go pawn to f5 attacking the queen, you lose. Because I go queen b7. So why couldn't I go queen b7 on the last move? Because queen d3 would have defended the knight and mate. Magnus baits f5. Now d3 doesn't defend mate anymore because you put your own pawn there. And queen b7. This is engine-like precision. Like surgical. Absolutely surgical. The rook and queen just hit the pawn. The queen has to go guard. And in that time, you're going to lose the knight or you're going to lose the game. He goes queen f6. Rook h3 is a mate threat. And when you guard, I take the knight and I'm just totally winning. I mean, it looks like there is a counterattack. There isn't. King g2, there is nothing. Marco Materia tries his hardest, but he gets absolutely, brutally attacked by the queen and the rook. Look at how the queen and the rook attack the king from different corners of the board. This is unparalleled level piece coordination. To understand that he is fine here, to understand that it's not about prying the defense away. No, it's not about that. It's about the fact that the counterplay will come back so viciously. Like, you trade a bishop and go rook to e7. Most people here would be freaking out. They'd be like, I'm down a knight. No, just clean counterattack. I have more games for you. In this game, Magnus played against Iranian Grandmaster Mehdi Force, and this is who? This is Mahdi Golami. This is a very, very strong Grandmaster. Magnus played a King's Indian defense. White played whatever on earth this is. And then, you know, d6, e5. And then we got a position that kind of resembles just the typical King's Indian. Magnus played knight h5, and in these types of positions, you try to get some sort of pawn play going, which he will get. But white played g4, which looks like, you know, you can't play knight f4, but you can. That's simply the loss of a pawn for black, but you cannot actually take this pawn. Why not? Your king is in the middle, and you have opened up too much of my material over here, and pawn to f5 is vicious. The bishop is on the receiving end of a rook attack. White now has to play pawn takes f5, 2 pawns down for black, but instead of taking, we take this opportunity to attack a piece in the white position and get a piece to the party, and then we bring our rook, and this king never got out of the middle. See, if in this position you wait even a move, like you play b6, white will castle. And that is the difference in this game, and now white will never castle. That's all Magnus needed. He understood the position a little bit better than the young opponent, and when knight f4 landed, you cannot be gluttonous against Magnus. He will make you pay. King f1, and where's the breakthrough? Pawn takes f5, queen d4, and there it is. He sacrifices the rook. Rook takes e3. Pawn takes, queen takes, looks like, well, white is up material, but his material is in the corner and it is never going to participate. Hey, remember the Magnus game with the light-scored bishop that couldn't get past the pawns? Isn't it incredible how, regardless of the opening, Magnus still manages to make all of his opponent's pieces look stupid? Bishop d4 is going to get to mate. Knight e4 is going to get to mate because you have knight g3, knight d2. You have all these ideas. And this game's not going to be going much longer. Knight g3, knight e2. We take rook e1. We clean up in the endgame. And we are now up 2 pawns. Okay, fine. The game will go a little bit longer, but this is totally over because we are going to be up, 2 clean pawns in an endgame. You got to give credit to black, who played on, who fought on, but Magnus walked his king to the opposite side of the board, promoted his pawn, and it's funny how even the transition to the endgame, like, it feels like he should have a checkmate, and he did. In this position, if he had played rook to e3, disconnecting the queen trade, he then would have followed up with bishop c3 and probably would have just won the game quite easily, or, you know, some other combination of moves. But he wins the endgame completely effortlessly, promotes the pawn, and wins another game. And, like, for the remainder of the tournament, you know, it's all going to be GMs. The last 4 games are going to be all GMs. That was only 5 games. 5 games, 21 minutes in. Next game, he's playing Alexander Shimanov, strong grandmaster commentator on the Levitov channel. I enjoy his recaps, actually, quite a lot. This was a King's Indian defense. So this looks like a free pawn. It's not, because the queen can give a check in a lot of lines when the knight moves. None of that is particularly important. Shimanov played a very nice game. He played a very good King's Indian. Magnus was very provocative in this game. You know, black played with very high understanding, putting his knight on e5, looking to use the rooks, etc., you know. But then here, remember how in the previous game, Magnus sacrificed his rook on the e3 square? Well, Shimanov tried to do the same thing, you know, because he thought, well, after this, I'm going to get my knight to f4, knight to e5. So when Magnus sacrifices his rook, you know, it's a masterclass. When you sacrifice your rook against Magnus, you better do it the right way, or he's really going to make you pay for it. Knight f4 check, king h1. Black gets a beautiful position, but there is nothing here at all. Knight b6, you move the rook, rook g1, and I will very quickly generate counterplay against you. Queen g5, we are going to trade all the pieces. You are going to lose all of your remaining, like, how did this happen? Black has no pieces left. It's the Magnus effect. That's what happens when you play Magnus. The king is hunted out of his corner. You have to play bishop f6, and black resigned here. Like, from a position where he had positional dominance, he just moved his rook out of the way. He hung his c4 pawn. Game over. Rook e7 was possible here to put some pressure on the queen, but it's not very clear at all that that's the best move, because even after knight c4, it looks like you're losing a pawn. But the idea of rook e7, knight c4 is that black can play knight to d3, and if you take the rook, this is mate. Oops. So you have to be super, super careful here. But, you know, that's blitz. So Magnus wins another game. In the next game, he played an Argentinian player, La Momia Jr., Joaquin Fiorito. I have absolutely no idea who this is, by the way, like straight up. But obviously a very, very good player from Argentina. And Magnus played a Sicilian defense. It was an Alipin. How is Magnus? Oh, and then it turned into an advanced French. So this is the advanced French. How does Magnus play the advanced French with the black pieces? Well, he plays it pretty normally. Okay, so far so good. Takes the bishop. He's going to castle. Plays f6, all normal. This is what you're supposed to do in this opening. Put pressure on white's big center. Okay, rook f6. Doubles the rooks. Okay, like, so far, very equal game. Knight d8. I mean, I'm not really sure what you're supposed to do here. Okay, white is sort of hesitating. Magnus not really also showing, like, any signs of powerful forward momentum. 30 moves of equality. But white is down a minute. White is down a minute. So we go knight c4. White plays bishop g6, and on the 31st move, blunders a combination. That bishop is defended by the knight, but the knight will be taken. And when you take the bishop, I will sack my bishop, because this bishop's not going anywhere. So I sack the bishop to open up your king. You try to sacrifice your bishop. So now we have a hanging bishop, a hanging bishop, a hanging knight. The queen could go here and here, and Magnus is like, haha, yeah, you should have taken my bishop with the knight, because now I sacrifice the rook again. Rook takes f3. and I get 2 pieces, and you lose. So we will try to go here. We will try to bring our queen over here. Time advantage, 1.5 minutes out of the starting 5. And this is now a clean win. Bishop f6. Was there a fork here, or am I imagining things? Knight f3, I guess there was rook f1 pinning. But it doesn't really matter. With 12 seconds on the clock, you can basically do anything. And he does. Now, we have 4 more games to go against very good opposition, starting with Hans Niemann, then Alireza Firouzja, then Dmitry Andreikin, and then Alexander Bortnik, one of the best blitz players in the world. So, first we go with Hans Niemann. Magnus in this game plays for a draw. He plays a boring line, a very equal line, okay? He plays something where the winning chances are not particularly high with white, and, you know, the losing chances for black are also not particularly high. So it's the 4-knight scotch with d4. We have a trade, bishop b4. All of this has been played before. This is all topical, very boring business. This is our position. White has absolutely no business winning this. This is like a well-known line, so everybody falls asleep, and you know, live happily ever after. But Hans in this game with black decided he was going to be a little bit more provocative. So, I mean, the position's just equal. King g7. And at some point, you know, Magnus was like, look, he's like offering a rook trade. I mean, he's going, you know, he's trying to bore his opponent to death, but there is a little bit of venom in the position. The venom in the position is, if you're not careful with black, you mishandle this, you can lose because you have long-term weaknesses, right? This for black is something where you try to play too solidly and you try, you know, you could get yourself in a little trouble. So rook c1, rook f2, rook e1, bishop b7 touching the pawn, and now the rook comes back. And I just want to show you, Magnus, like a dentist, gets his bishop into the territory and extracts the tooth. Look at this. The pawns are forced forward, and this steady movement of pawns is losing for black. First you go here so he can't trade them. Now watch this. We try to trade into an endgame where we put some pressure, but the refusal to trade into the endgame allows Magnus to push his a-pawn. Watch this. He pushes this pawn to a6 because he knows that long-term is fatal. And then he just goes for the pawn and completely methodically wins the pawn and just wins the game because the pawn is going to queen. You cannot stop the pawn. Like, the way Magnus won this position was unbelievable. He took one of the most boring positions, one of the most dead variations in all of chess, put his king out there on f5, and showed why you can never relax against him. You can never relax. This is known to be a draw with best play. But Magnus knows the way to ask the questions with the best play, and he got in there with the bishop, forced the pawns to come forward, and that's all he needed to then clear the walkway for the king. I mean, this is absurd, the way he won this. And he got 3 more games. But when he's playing like that, you're not going to do anything. Alireza Firouzja is the only competition. He's the only person who can consistently beat Magnus. He's top 2 in the world in speed time controls. In this opening, Magnus, sorry, I'll flip it. Magnus was playing with black. It was a Catalan, and Magnus got a very nice game. He was putting a lot of pressure on Firouzja. And, you know, queen d6, etc. But as always, you know, Firouzja had something up his sleeve. And he kept going, he kept fighting, queen e7. And suddenly came the move e4. And Magnus is losing. He's losing. Instead of queen e7, you needed to make sure that your bishop stayed somewhat protected, and your knight had the mobility of the e7 square, potentially. Because when you go here, and e4 comes, suddenly your knight can't go anywhere. Can't go anywhere. If it ever goes to c7, you will lose the bishop on c4, but also I have various ideas, like I can go, for example, queen d6, and I'm forking you, kind of. It's really hard to guard both of these things, and if you take, my pawn just becomes a passer, and I'm winning. Just winning the game. Because it's impossible to defend. So, suddenly Magnus has to sacrifices knight. He has no other choice, and he's literally just losing. I mean, king e1, not only is he losing, he's down 30 seconds, the pawn is 2 squares from queening, and white has an extra bishop. But on a day when you are destined to win all 11 games, you will work your magic even here. Down 30 seconds, down a bishop, pawn 2 squares from queening. How are we going to win this? Okay, we got to push the pawn. Now white wins with rook c1. Rook c1, d7, and rook c8. That is the right move order. Instead of that, Alireza, oh, sorry, he did play rook c1. I apologize. He did play rook c1. But now, you cannot play d7. First, you need to go queen b6. This move attacks my rook and stops me from bringing my queen back. Why does it look like you cannot play queen b6? Because you would be allowing counterplay. You would. But that's how you have to win. And to beat Magnus, you have to beat him like 6 times in the same game. Queen b6 wins because after a long king attack, your king is safe. Alireza says, I mean, d7 is probably also winning. No, not only is it not winning, it's not even better anymore. How is that possible? Like, what? Now here and now, because white is stuck defending his pawn, black gets all the momentum. And suddenly, you're in an endgame with Magnus where it looked like you were easily winning, but now Magnus is cleaning up all the pawns. He has 3 extra pawns, and he has 20 seconds more. What? Yo, he was just down 30 seconds. How did 50 seconds turn around? I'll tell you how. Firouzja couldn't believe what was happening. He was sitting there going, yo, I'm up a bishop in 30 seconds. Why am I not winning? Welcome to playing Magnus Carlsen. Welcome. And guess what's going to happen? He's going to win this game. He's going to win it because of time. He's just going to make you defend this position, and at some point, when your time gets low, he's going to make a breakthrough. And there's the breakthrough. Now he has 4 pawns to 0, and now he forced a queen trade. He's just winning. 4 pawns. A bishop can't stop 4 pawns. It can hardly stop 3. And it can stop 2, but not on opposite sides of the board, depending on how far they are. And yeah, the bishop just can't stop 4 pawns. And Magnus wins. h3, h2. How did this happen? How did this happen? Queen g2 is mate. He has 2 more wins. This is a 32-minute video, and I haven't even covered 2 of his last wins. He plays Dimitri Andreykin. He plays the Alpin Sicilian. Dimitri, excellent player. I don't know why his flag is Georgia, but okay. Bishop c4. Maybe he likes Mirab Dvalishvili. So this is just some line. Don't worry. Just some like little endgame line. Here's the problem. Against Magnus, if you play an endgame line, something a little dry, and you're not careful, you're just gonna lose. So bishop b7, knight c2. Magnus takes the rook. Black takes back. This is trapped. So we play bishop e3. You got to take the rook. You do. And now rook c1. Black gets the knight out of the corner. Magnus plays knight c3. Now that knight is trapped. We take on a7. We take on a1. This is what we have to work with. This pawn is going to try to promote. Black is going to try to stop the pawn from promoting. We go knight e4. Black goes castle. We trade off the bishop. Wait. Yeah. Andreykin played rook a8, defending his bishop, but blundered rook b1. He probably thought he could defend the knight with rook a2, but this is just over. Because you have knight c3. And this is the key move. Knight to d1. This is what he missed. He thought rook a3, and after rook b2, there's rook, there's rook takes. So rook b2, rook c3, and the bishop stops the back rank checkmate. Something like this. What he forgot about is knight d1. And now you lose. Knight d1. Backwards knight move. Magnus calculates a move better than the opponent. You have to play knight b2. Maybe he even saw this, but this is just over. And that's the end. Hard fought. Hard fought. Little tactical sequence. Looks like both knights are going to get out, and there's going to be a back rank escape. Knight back to d1. You cannot take because back rank mate, and I just have 2 attackers on the knight, and you lose the game. And that brings us to the final game of the video against Grandmaster Alexander Bortnik. Top 10 player in the world in Blitz, easily. Online, probably top 5, top 7. We have a Spanish. I think Bortnik was trying to play like he was trying to play a Berlin or something. Instead, Magnus plays this line with bishop c5 and b5. And this is just some, I don't know what this is. Knight d5, knight e4, some sharp line where, black has to take a couple pawns and white gets some initiative. Knight to c5. And Magnus gets a very weird position where he's going to lose his rook, probably, again, like this, like he has in the previous games. But for the second time in this video, he's going to be down a rook in the corner of the board for a piece and completely outplay his opponent. So c6, this queen's a little bit stuck. Bortnik just develops his rook. Now we are trying to reposition the bishop to trap the queen and also to put pressure. And also we want to move our d-pawn in the future. So queen a7, queen d... I would never in a million years. I would never play like this. This is crazy. Bishop b6 is the idea. So you develop this bishop, and now I play f5. That was the point. Now Bortnik can play bishop g5, deflecting the queen from the defense of the bishop. He doesn't see it. d5. Magnus all in, going for 11 out of 11. Bortnik plays king h1, anticipating the attack. Here comes rook f7. Queen c5, queen d7, making sure everything is stable before launching the pawns. Still making a waiting move. Bortnik down a whole minute. Plays bishop f2, finally f4. Opening the diagonals and restricting space. Bishop d6 kicks the queen around. King h7, more waiting moves, but c4 is an overreaction because now you shut the door in the center. White is going to really struggle to get the pieces. He tries to sacrifice material here, but he gets everything cleared out, and yeah, the bishops versus the rooks just not going to work. Pawn takes, a5, outside pass pawn, rooks off the board, and as always, we win in the endgame when we are Magnus Carlsen. Bishop e7, bishop f6, kick this out, make the queen. That's mate. No, it's not. We'd sacrifice the material. And that's the end. Rook a4. 11 out of 11. What more do you want? I mean, he straight up beat everybody he played, even when the positions were slightly dicey. He was perfect. His play was amazing. Absolutely amazing. What else can you say? Defensively resilient. He was in trouble for like 2 moves out of the 500 that he played, 600. I mean, I just mind-blowing stuff. Not much more for you today. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you're watching this in November, recaps of the World Cup will come tomorrow when the round of 32 concludes. That's all. Get out of here.